In a world set in the not-so-distant future, completely immersive virtual reality games had become commonplace, earning them a reputation for being retro. As a result, there were very few masterpieces in gaming, and an overwhelming number of game releases were considered trash. Their designs fell far short of the graphic technological capabilities of the time. Despite most people dismissing these games, which made sense since they were admittedly terrible, some individuals found a unique fascination with them. After all, there's a taste for everything. These people who dedicated themselves to playing these lousy games came to be known as bad game hunters. Our protagonist, Rakuro Hizutome, a high school junior, was one of them. The anime starts with Rakuro defeating the final boss in one of these terrible games called Faria Chronicle Online. In this game, the villain was an evil deity. After the deity's defeat, the game's main character, Faria, was overjoyed because her journey had come to an end. But just as Rakuro completed the game, he delivered a swift kick to Faria's face, declaring that she was the real culprit behind all the game's problems, thus putting an end to one of the worst lousy games Rakuro had ever played. He felt greatly relieved and happy that the suffering was finally over, akin to a prisoner who had just been set free. This made him eager to find his next bad game, just to experience that sensation all over again. The next day, Rakuro began his day as usual, snacking before heading to school. His mother had a collection of insects, indicating her passion for entomology. Rakuro mentioned to his mother that one of her butterflies had escaped its cage before leaving for school. At school, students discussed their plans for the upcoming summer vacation, which was starting the next day. Meanwhile, a girl named Rie Sega, also a high school junior, who clearly had a crush on Rakuro, observed him from afar, trying to muster the courage to approach him. She rehearsed a conversation in her mind, intending to use game as a conversation starter, as she knew it was something Rakuro liked. However, her attempt was foiled when one of Rakuro's friends approached him, thwarting any opportunity for her to get closer. After school, Ria visited a game rental store called Rock Roll, where the manager, Mana Iwamaki, was preparing the store for the summer vacation rush. When Ria entered the store, Mana greeted her and, noticing Ria looking around, informed her that Rakuro wasn't there. Ria tried to cover up the real reason for her visit, saying she was looking for new games, but it was evident that she was infatuated with Rakuro. Mana, however, saw through her intentions and revealed that Rakuro wouldn't be showing up anytime soon. She explained that Rakuro had challenged himself to play a particularly terrible game for quite some time, which had kept him away from the store. Mana then showed Ria a game that one of their customers was renting. The game had terrible ad for allies, extremely difficult enemy attacks, and was riddled with bugs. This made Faria Chronicle Online, legendary in the realm of bad games, a perfect fit for bad game hunters, as it required a lot of skill, even to get past the first challenge. Unbeknownst to them, Rakuro had already completed the game, and he arrived at the store at that moment to return it and ran an even more challenging game. When Ria saw her crush entering the store, she hastily hid, lacking the courage to face him. Rakuro excitedly began recounting his experience with Faria Chronicle Online to Mana, expressing how it was the ultimate terrible game. He explained that the protagonist, Faria, was incredibly annoying, causing all the problems in the game. She killed her group mates, irritated the villagers, and halted the journey whenever she got upset. To make things worse, she always blamed the final boss for everything, a character that Rakuro couldn't help but despise. The game even allowed players to take out their frustration by beating Faria for 3 minutes as a reward for defeating the final boss. Rakuro described how achieving this was a deeply purifying experience for him. While Rakuro enthusiastically spoke of how terrible the game was, Rai observed him from a distance. He mentioned that he had no idea how to find a game that surpassed the level of awfulness of that one. Mana then proposed something new. She told Rakuro about a new game in the store called Shangri-La Frontier, a game that was the complete opposite of terrible, widely regarded as a successful virtual reality game with over 30 million players. Confronted with something entirely different from what he was accustomed to, Rakuro accepted the challenge and took the legendary bad game home. There, he did some research on this new game and found out that it had set a record for the highest number of simultaneous players. Rakuro then read the game's synopsis, learning that it was set in a world 1,000 years after a space colony had vanished during a journey through the universe, leaving behind a new human society where players lived freely with medieval technology. He reflected on how this world was much more intriguing than the one he had previously played. After finishing his canned drink, Rakuro finally installed the game on his computer, eager to start playing a genuinely good game after spending so much time on terrible ones. When he logged in, he began by creating his character, needing to choose a class, and was impressed by the sheer number of options the game offered. Rakuro ended up selecting a dual-wielding mercenary class, finding it flexible. Next, he chose his character's nativeness as a wanderer to gain bonuses to luck, which increased his critical hit rate and the chance to obtain items in the game. Lastly, he customized his character's appearance, once again amazed by the vast array of choices, from body type and race to even tiny details like adjusting the eyes and hair. However, he realized he was getting a bit too emotional being so accustomed to playing low-quality games. He decided to focus on creating his first detailed character instead. The final result wasn't all that rich in details, as Rakuro chose to leave his character almost entirely without clothing or accessories. This was because his gameplay style involved ignoring armor to sell his initial equipment for a better weapon. However, to avoid people recognizing his character as a nudist, he added the only available mask, resulting in a character with little clothing and a bird-like face. Another quirk of Rakuro was his habit of always naming his characters Sunraku, a fusion of his first and second names. Once everything was ready, he followed the game's instructions and lay down in a stable place. He skipped the prologue, eager to begin his first divine game. From the start, he was impressed by the game's level of detail, and the experience of moving within it felt almost lifelike. He started exploring by running and climbing trees, getting a better view of the in-game forest and being enchanted by the landscape. Next, he opened his map, surprised that he didn't start in a beginner tutorial city. He didn't know that choosing Wanderer as his nativeness would place him randomly as a beginner. However, since the initial map was straightforward, Rakuro easily located the nearest city called Firstia, located to the east. After orienting himself, Rakuro began walking towards the city, learning more about the game, such as his character's low defense due to the lack of armor or any protection on his body. Yet he decided to trust the luck bonus he had gained by choosing to be a wanderer. Right at that moment, Rakuro was attacked by a goblin, and it was time to use his two swords for the first time. He managed to defeat the creature with a single blow since it was a beginner-level enemy. This allowed Rakuro to level up and even acquire the goblin's axe. However, he had barely finished his first fight when he noticed another enemy approaching. Unlike the goblin, this was a much faster and more dangerous Vorpal rabbit, which almost dealt a fatal blow to Rakuro. Seconds after the first attack, it lunged again, but Rakuro blocked it with his swords and managed to land the first blow on the rabbit. However, it proved stronger than the goblin, being defeated only after Rakuro's second attack. Being a tougher enemy, his character gained 2 levels instead of just 1, but the rabbit didn't leave behind any weapons. Rakuro was disappointed because he had really wanted the rabbit's knife. The game then showed him that he could learn new abilities by using certain actions, which once again left Rakuro impressed by the game's quality. Realizing how effective defensive and dodging skills were even against higher-level enemies, he wished to try various combat styles. At that moment, Rakuro finally noticed that he hadn't encountered a single bug in the game so far, which was rare for him because in lousy games, there were bugs everywhere, such as things becoming invisible, the ability to pass through walls that shouldn't be passed through, and not being able to attack an enemy even when close to it. He was becoming increasingly enamored with this divine game and was determined to make the most of every minute he spent playing, all in the hopes of acquiring that Vorpal rabbit's knife. After a long time of playing and facing enemies in the forest, he gained new abilities and more experience points, reaching level 12 and becoming much more advanced than before. Moreover, he finally got the rabbit's knives he had desired after defeating 50 of them, concluding that it was indeed a rare enemy, as it didn't appear as frequently as he'd hoped, requiring a lot of gameplay to find all of them. Despite the effort, it was worth it because the 2 knives were better than the swords he had. So after allocating some points, Rakuro decided to move forward to find even stronger enemies since the area he was in was for beginners. However, when he opened the map, he realized he was much closer to the city of Secondale now than to Firstia, with only a bridge to cross to get there. As he reached the bridge, he encountered the first true adversary in the game, a giant snake blocking the bridge. It was necessary to defeat her to cross. Rakuro noticed that the game recommended facing the giant snake with a group of 3 people, which excited him even more as it made facing the enemy alone without using any defense even more challenging. He was truly enjoying getting to know the legendary game Shangri-La Fronty. Meanwhile, in Firstia, the starting city, all the players were impressed by someone's gear who clearly wasn't a beginner and had no reason to be there. However, that character was Ri, who had come to Firstia to find Rakuro because she knew he used the same character name in every game he played. But she was frustrated not to find him there, not understanding why since every beginner player went to that city. Back with Rakuro, he began to battle the voracious Cobra, first planning to discover her attacks and movements, thinking that by doing so, she would be an easy opponent to defeat, especially because he couldn't afford to take any damage as that snake would undoubtedly finish him off with a single strike. Rakuro was quite confident that his plan would work, but as soon as he tried to make his first strike, his sword broke, making him realize how tough the snake's scales were. Still, Rakuro remained confident and armed himself with the two machetes he had obtained by defeating the rabbits, as they were stronger than the swords. He prepared to strike again, but the cobra was faster and hit him with a poisonous liquid that would cause damage every 10 seconds. Rakuro still thought it would be easy to win the battle, having conquered much harder games before, even though he now had a limited time of 4 minutes to defeat his opponent, as his life would end due to the poison after that. Rakuro believed he needed to find the cobra's weak point, but he had already noticed that in that game, nothing was random and critical hits were activated by landing an ideal blow or hitting the enemy's weak spot. He thought that being a snake covered in tough scales, her weak point should be the head, but Rakuro realized it was hard to hit it, leaving him with the option of creating a critical point. He struck a part of the cobra's body, creating a wound. With this, all he had to do was keep hitting that same spot to deal critical damage. However, even though his plan worked, the cobra had a lot of HP, and she managed to attack him, forcing Rakuro to dodge and stop his blows. In a matter of seconds, the cobra's wound healed, and Rakuro finally realized he had been overly confident just because he had cleared much lousier games, having acted arrogantly thinking he would defeat a strong opponent like her without taking any damage. The cobra managed to grab Rakuro by the mouth, but even though he knew he had underestimated that enemy, he wasn't willing to give up. Rakuro managed to free himself from the cobra's mouth and quickly struck her on the head. Then he sheathed one of his swords to hold her hair, and with his other hand, he launched another attack, finally defeating the boss of that area. With this, he reached level 14 and celebrated his victory, realizing that he had received snake scales and hair as a prize, which should be worth a decent amount of money. However, he received another dose of poison, finally remembering that he was still at risk of dying. Quickly, he allocated all the points he had earned in agility and energy to reach the city in time to buy an antidote. But he realized he didn't know where the shops were because he had never been to that city before. So it seemed less risky for him to look for respawn points, so that when he died, he would have the game saved. But Rakuro also didn't know where the respawn points were, meaning the situation was pretty dire for him. In the city, we see a couple talking. The girl, Mia, says she wants to tame a canine monster because she couldn't have pets in her apartment. But in this game, it was possible to train some critters. She asked for his help in doing so, calling the guy by his real name. He asked her to use his character's name, Reiji, within the game. He was super happy that after 3 months, he had convinced Mia, the girl he liked, to play that game, allowing him to demonstrate all his knowledge in that world. Suddenly, the two see a guy with a bird-like face running towards them in a panic. Mia thinks it's a monster and prepares to attack, but luckily, Reiji realizes that he has a character's name and explains that if she attacks, she'll become a player killer with a skull in front of her name, which Mia clearly didn't want to happen. Reiji deduces that Rakuro's desperation must be due to the snake's poison, so he shouts to him that the inn is in a white building right at the entrance of the city, where Rakuro can set his respawn point by lying in one of the beds there. Rakuro thanks him for the help and runs in the direction he pointed out, while Reiji explains to Mia that in the beginning, it's quite common for players to show up in the city desperate after being hit by the snake's poison. Reiji also understands that Rakuro sold his clothes and weapons to focus on agility, making Mia think he's very experienced. This makes Reiji quite happy and grateful to Rakuro for giving him the opportunity to show his knowledge to Mia. Meanwhile, in the inn, he finally arrives there and the attendant starts explaining how it works to rent a room. But Rakuro was desperate because his life would end at any moment, so he dismisses the explanations and quickly asks for a room, managing to reach the bed just in time as shortly after lying down, his HP reaches 0 and he receives the penalty for death. He disconnects from the game and thinks about how he narrowly avoided losing any items, realizing that he would have to thank Reiji for showing him where the inn was. Afterward, he walks through Secondale, this being his first city in the game. Rakuro then decides he needs a map, some recovery items, and new equipment, as he needs a more powerful main weapon to replace his starting dual swords. Suddenly, he realizes that all the players are staring at him, finding it strange to see a guy with a bird-like face who's practically half naked. This makes Rakuro think it might be a good idea to get some more appropriate clothing. So he goes to a store and buys the cheapest outfit there, made of mud toad skin, which is resistant to cuts. His goal wasn't defense, but rather to stop other players from staring at him as if he were weird. However, he doesn't buy the whole outfit, ignoring the mask that comes with it, as he already had his bird mask. Then he goes to the weapon shop to see what's available, hoping to get a high-quality weapon. But as he examines the catalog, he realizes that his Vorpal mesh sheets are much superior to all the weapons there. The store owner explains that the mesh sheets are rare items in the game, and if he wants something better, he'll have to craft it. Rakuro asks if the shop owner could make a weapon for him, and the guy responds that he would if Rakuro brought the necessary raw materials. So Rakuro goes to the swamp of difficulties to find ore, the material needed to make his weapon. But even after a while, Rakuro only manages to get 2 ores, finding more common rock than anything else, while he needed at least 6 of them to make his weapon. He still had to deal with all the swamp mud that made his movements very difficult, in addition to the heavy pickaxe he bought, which didn't help his situation at all. Suddenly, a seemingly harmless mud toad appears. So, Rakuro decides to leave the creature alone to save himself the trouble. However, the toad jumps, splattering mud all over him, testing his patience. Rakuro decides to attack the little monster and throws his pickaxe at it, knocking it down. Then he walks up to the creature, reflecting that, just like his leather outfit, which was made of mud toad skin and was resistant to blades, the toad must be as well. So he uses his axe for the first time, which he got from the goblin. But Rakuro becomes increasingly irritated due to the slowness of his steps caused by the mud hindering his character's movements. When Rakuro finally catches up to the toad, he hits it with his axe, easily defeating the monster. At this point, he sees 2 new characters in the game and thinks that with the summer vacation coming, many more players are likely to appear, which means that more players will soon be searching for materials. So Rakuro decides to continue mining to gather a good amount of raw materials before it becomes even harder to find ore with the increasing demand. After 3 hours, he manages to collect a substantial amount of ore. Then the weapon shop owner shows him the options he has with that material. But at this moment, he notices that Rakuro has also found the swamp coffin fossil, a rare material that can be used to craft the swamp dagger. Rakuro is impressed by the weapon and asks the shop owner to make 2 of those daggers for him. After Rakuro buys a map and a few other items, his 2 daggers are ready and he's amazed by how divine those weapons are. The shop owner explains that Rakuro should keep bringing materials to him to further enhance the weapons. At this moment, Rakuro realizes how the shop owner was conversing naturally, despite being a computer-controlled character, and he's impressed by the artificial intelligence. The man then warns Rakuro that it's not a good idea for him to leave the city at the moment because it's getting dark and the nighttime monsters are very dangerous. Rakuro thanks him for the warning, but he's someone who enjoys a good challenge and is eager to test his new weapons and advanced levels. In other words, the shop owner's warning only makes Rakuro more determined to leave the city at night to face the monsters. Meanwhile, Rei had already searched for Rakuro's character in all the starting areas, leaving only Secondale City. She faces the voracious Cobra and, being more advanced in the game, easily defeats her, thinking that only someone like Rakuro could manage to face such a tough opponent while still at the beginner level. At the same time, nearby, Rakuro starts to understand why the shop owner asked him not to leave the city at night, as the nighttime monsters were proving to be much stronger than the others, causing him to level up and gain new abilities. However, while fighting a red-hatted goblin, he realizes that the opponent is much stronger than a regular forest goblin, with a lot of HP, a unique fighting style, and the ability to summon multiple allies, a power that Rakuro thought should only be used by weaker monsters. Surrounded by the small creatures, Rakuro realizes he's in real trouble since even fighting just one of them was challenging enough. Even if he tried to escape, he didn't know if he would survive. But as he was enjoying the challenge, fleeing wasn't an option. He starts to fight the small goblins, but suddenly, he realizes he has underestimated the game once again because all the creatures are defeated due to the arrival of a new monster. Rakuro remembers that this wasn't just an ordinary game, it was divine. The opponent is a gigantic creature, a unique monster named Lekan, the Night Striker. Unfortunately for Rakuro, in the entire history of the Shangri-La Frontier game, no player had managed to defeat even one unique monster, as they were incredibly powerful and difficult to face. In the past, Rie was struggling to complete a very challenging game. She confided in Mana, the owner of the game store, about needing to find a way to finish it or else she'd never be able to embark on an adventure with Rakuro. So Mana suggested that Rie should play some flawless games to strengthen her skills since she didn't want to hold Rakuro back. This was the moment she introduced Rie to the divine game, Shangri-La Frontier, a game that any discerning gamer would want to check out. Rie mentioned that her sister enjoyed the game a lot, and Mana proposed that she should ask her sister to teach her everything she knew to become strong enough to guide Rakuro when he played. Rie accepted the challenge, determined to become proficient. However, what Mana didn't anticipate was that Rie would become addicted to Shangri-La Frontier. And so Rie became an exceptionally skilled player and set out to find Rakuro in the city of Secondale. There she crossed paths with Mia and Rigi, who informed her they had seen a character named Sumrako, which was Rakuro's in-game name. The two were taken aback by Rie's intimidating appearance. They explained that Rakuro used to wear a bird head and little clothing, but was now running because he had been poisoned by a snake, though they suggested he might have acquired new equipment. Rei realized that Rakuro had indeed managed to defeat the snake without visiting the first city, and as a token of gratitude for the information, she gave Mia and Riji a coordinates teleporter before speeding off in search of Rakuro. Mia inquired about who this player could be, and Riji speculated that based on her guild cloak, she belonged to a guild focused on unique monsters like Lycan, a night attacker. Since Mia didn't understand what these monsters were, Riji explained that they were a special class with a name and title. Most in-game monsters reappeared after being defeated, but unique monsters were a one-of-a-kind entity, rumored to have 7 in total. Nobody knew how to encounter them. Moreover, for each unique monster, there existed a guild formed by the best players to defeat that specific monster. So Rei was part of the guild designated to take down Lycan, the night attacker, who was currently standing in front of Rakuro. Lycan was essentially a powerful, gigantic black wolf that had swiftly defeated a group of red hat goblins, signifying that a single strike from him could reduce Rakuro's health to 0. Rakuro was paralyzed with fear as he gazed at Lycan, but after a while the monster finally launched an attack with its massive paw. Rakuro reacted quickly, defending himself with his new swords. Subsequently, Rakuro attempted to strike the wolf but had limited success. Nevertheless, he held on to hope, thinking it would be easy to defeat this unique monster. However, he knew that the battle would be challenging, and he was grateful for his new abilities gained from practicing all night, as without them he wouldn't have been able to block Lycan's attack. Rakuro had to remain vigilant as he managed to draw his knives and land a critical blow on the monster. They continued their battle with Rakuro doing well. Suddenly, the moon was obscured by clouds and Lycan vanished into thin air. Rakuro looked around searching for the creature when he realized it was right behind him. Rakuro merrily evaded it and managed another critical hit, but then Lycan disappeared once more. When it reappeared, the monster attacked Rakuro with full force, but Rakuro skillfully dodged every blow. However, the creature continued to vanish and reappear, making Rakuro wonder if the wolf could teleport. They continued their battle, and Rakuro noticed that Lycan's skin was even tougher than the cobra's scales, rendering his previous attacks ineffective. Despite delivering around 200 critical hits, Rakuro felt that he was making no progress in harming the monster. Furthermore, his Vorpei's blades, once nearly perfect, were now worn out. In other words, unless Rakuro could find a vulnerable spot on the wolf, his weapon would be destroyed. Rakuro admitted that the monster was too powerful for someone of his level, yet he continued to enjoy the divine game, relishing every challenge. Rakuro faced Lycan, delivering one critical hit after another. However, after a while, Lycan prepared to launch an attack. Rakuro believed that Lycan wouldn't be able to reach him from that distance, but the wolf began to howl, creating such a loud noise that it shattered some nearby rocks and froze Rakuro in midair. At that moment, the clouds covered the moon once more and Lycan disappeared again. However, Rakuro couldn't move, and as he fell, his body started to disintegrate. When he finally hit the ground, the wolf was there once more, but Rakuro was no longer able to fight, with half of his body already disintegrated. He couldn't comprehend the nature of that attack, but he noticed that for some reason, even after such a powerful blow, he still had 1 HP remaining. Nevertheless, he knew it wouldn't last long as the wolf stood right before him and he was unable to fight. Rakuro recognized that this unique monster was as strong as its creators intended, a perfectly programmed adversary. However, this also meant that it was possible to defeat Lycan, and that's precisely why Rakuro decides that his goal will not be a final boss, but rather to defeat Lycan, the Mega-Attacker. And so, Rakuro's life comes to an end. He wakes up in Ian's bed in the city where his respawn point is and notices that he has some marks on his body. He then discovers that he's cursed by Lycan. It prevents him from using any kind of equipment on the affected areas, which is a significant portion of his body. So he'll have to go without any equipment, just as he was at the beginning of the game, only this time it's not by choice. Rakuro is furious with Lycan, who appeared out of nowhere, devoured him, and cursed him. Thanks to Lycan, Rakuro was left with no equipment. The curse also grants resistance to magical effects on the affected areas, makes lower-level monsters flee from the character, and affects conversations with NPCs. To make matters worse, the curse can only be removed through the prayer of a saint or by defeating Lycan, a type of curse that must be destroyed at its root. Rakuro walks through the city so angry about the situation that he begins to compare this divine game to the trash he used to play, while other people are frightened by his bird-headed appearance and lack of clothing, just as it happened at the beginning of the game. Despite this, Rakuro decides to stay calm and remember the 3 principles he learned from playing bad games. First, to have a patient heart. Second, to have an unshakable spirit. And lastly, to have decisiveness. So if he steps away from the crowd to think calmly about what to do and analyzes his character sheet, discovering that he gained a lot of experience from fighting a unique monster. He leveled up, improved his skills, and had 50 stat points to distribute. He decides to distribute the points carefully, but without any defense or attack equipment. He allocates the points as if he were made of paper, considering that any blow could end him. Therefore, he invests everything in speed and resistance, disregarding all other options. However, Rakuro's best stat is still his luck with 65 points, which is probably the reason he survived the unique monster's initial attack with just 1 HP. He thinks he's been through a lot and had enough bad luck, so he wishes to rely a bit on his luck. Suddenly, a rabbit jumps right on top of his head. Rakuro wonders if this is a Vorpal rabbit, but it's quite different from others, wearing little clothes and a top hat. He ponders whether monsters could actually appear in the city while the rabbit waves goodbye to him. Not knowing what's going on, Rakuro decides to follow the animal. The chase begins, and while running, he concludes that this rabbit is indeed quite different from others and must offer a rare item, thinking it's a game event. After some time running, he finally corners the animal, but magically, a door appears. The rabbit goes through it, and Rakuro approaches the door, discovering that it leads to the Rabbit Country, a unique game location. Then he remembers reading that despite Shangri-La Frontier having a vast world exploration storyline, it also features some hidden side quests that are unknown to the public. Nobody knows when or where they will appear or what they do. Therefore, the equipment, abilities, and spells that one can obtain in these unique settings are always of high level, which makes game clans search for them. Rakuro opens the door, observing everything around, and believes that his luck is at play for him to have found something so valuable so early in the game. He decides he can't let this opportunity pass and steps through the door. However, Rakuro didn't notice that the door recommended the player to be at least level 80, while he was only at level 28, not even halfway to the game's recommendation. Rakuro then falls into the rabbit country called Rabbits, where everywhere he looks, there are these creatures and objects have little rabbit ears. At this moment, he's startled because the rabbit he was chasing before is right behind him, welcoming him. The rabbit says that everyone in Rabbits was eager to meet him because Rakuro had the courage to face a unique monster alone. It goes on about how brave Rakuro is and how powerful Lycan is. After a while of the rabbit chattering, Rakuro finally remembers that affecting NPCs was one of the effects of his curse. Then the rabbit finally introduces itself as Emil and says that their leader wants to meet Rakuro. Emil starts guiding Rakuro to their leader's palace, and Rakuro is worried that the leader might seek revenge for all the rabbits he killed. However, Emil reassures him, saying that their leader is not that type. Upon arriving at the rabbit palace, Rakuro is impressed by the place, and Emil explains that despite many players visiting their country, Rakuro will be the first to see the palace. This makes him feel special, thinking that luck was finally on his side. Next, Emil leads Rakuro into a room in the palace and enters, announcing to his leader that he brought the human of the Vorpal soul to meet him. When Rakuro sees Rabbits' leader, Vizak, he becomes quite frightened by his appearance and intimidating demeanor. Vizak says he thought humans had no talent, but it seems one is different, leaving Rakuro paralyzed with fear. The next day at the Rockroll store, the manager once again catches Rie by surprise, trying to find Rakuro in the store. She asks Rie if she's heading to the dojo, and Rie confirms she is, but decided to stop by the store to see if there were any new games. Mana immediately informs her that Rakuro didn't go there that day. It's summer vacation, so he's probably gaming nonstop. Rie explains that since Rakuro always played with the nickname Sunraku, she tried to find him in the game. However, it seems he skipped the first tutorial city. The manager laughs and says it's typical of a fanatic for bad games. He'll probably encounter all sorts of unique scenarios. Rie agrees, saying it's not impossible. The manager wishes Rie good luck and tells her to confess her feelings to Sunraku. This makes Rie blush with embarrassment again. At Sunraku's house, we meet his sister named Rumi Hizutom. She's leaving for work and mentions she'll be back late. Sunraku doesn't pay much attention but gives her an okay. He's grabbing a can from the fridge while reading about the unique scenarios in Shangri-La on the internet. He finds an article about the Vorpal rabbit scenario, but it's different from what he experienced the previous day in the game. There he encountered a mafia boss rabbit that was as intimidating as Lycan. This boss introduces himself as the leader of Rabbits, which is the name of this unique rabbit scenario. The boss rabbit, Vizak, asks if Rakuro really fought the Toto, referring to Lycan. Vizak mentions that Rakuro has the Vorpal spirit, but Rakuro has no idea what that means. The boss rabbit offers to train Rakuro, and since this is a significant opportunity, he accepts right away. Rakuro is initially afraid he might have said something wrong, but the rabbit boss calmly tells him that since Rakuro requested his training, he's now Rakuro's little brother. The boss finishes by saying that for close friends like Rakuro, they can call him Vash, a privilege reserved for those he truly recognizes as having potential. Rakuro is relieved that he gave the right response. Vash asks the little rabbit to take care of Rakuro, who wants to show him the palace, but Rakuro has been playing for a long time and wants to rest a bit. Of course, he also wants to research more about unique scenarios and unique monsters. The little rabbit decides to show him their lodging instead. Rakuro is surprised that he can set a respawn point there. Before they leave, Vash mentions that he forgot something and throws a necklace toward Rakuro, who is utterly confused. It turns out to be a Vorpal Soul necklace. The user receives half the experience points but gains 2.5 times more status points. Rakuro tries to remove the necklace but is unsuccessful. It can't be removed unless the rabbit boss allows it. The little rabbit says the item suits Rakuro well, which annoys him because he now has another restriction. It dawns on Rakuro that the necklace is a significant advantage and somewhat overpowered. He realizes that nobody in the forums seems to know about this unique scenario that leads to the rabbit's palace or the necklace. It's a scenario that only he knows. He checks the time and realizes he has a commitment, complaining about a colleague named Katso and wondering why he had to invite him to this lousy game. The game he's talking about is Berserk Online Passion, abbreviated as BOP, but known for being a terrible game. Rakuro used to be addicted to it, and it's one of those lousy games. On the first day of release, the player base dropped to less than 100, meaning that most players are the same type, addicted to bad games. Sunraku meets his partner there, and the guy immediately wants to start fighting. Sunraku asks about the rules, and his friend says it's obvious that anything goes. The friend uses a technique that glitches his character and attacks him. Sunraku remains calm and responds with a series of quick punches. While they're fighting, two guys nearby realize that both Katso and Sunraku are fighting. This game is so crazy that the winner is the one who knows more about bugs because everything is buggy in this game. The fight ends with Sunraku losing because his friend knows more about the bugs in the game, and Sunraku has only been fighting NPCs. The friend recalls that when he heard Sunraku was playing Shangri-La, he thought it was a joke, but now asks if it's true. Sunraku has no shame in admitting he's addicted and mentions the 7 most powerful monsters in the game, of which only 4 names are known so far. The friend doesn't care, but Sunraku says he won't stop playing until he defeats the monster that humiliated him. Now, Katsu is convinced to start playing Shangri-La after this conversation. He asks Sunraku if he knows who else is playing Shangri-La. Sunraku has no idea, and the friend says he sent an email to someone letting them know that Sunraku is now playing Shangri-La Frontier, and it's a significant event. The scene then shifts to a woman wreaking havoc on some NPCs in Shangri-La. In fact, they are not NPCs, but other players, and she earns the player kill tag. She arrogantly mentions that she'll have to be nice to Rakuro, aka Sunraku. In his second-day alley, Sunraku enters the game again. Maybe due to playing a bit of trash games, he notices how easy the Shangri-La avatars are to maneuver. The little rabbit, Emil, asks where Sunraku wants to go. There are plenty of fun places in Rabbit's palace, like the arena, training ground, and more. Sunraku says all of that sounds interesting, but he wants to reach Third Dreama before it gets crowded. Since the summer vacation started, Firstia, the first city, is full of new players, and Secondale will soon be the same. Sunraku doesn't want to deal with congestion or fight over monsters and mining spots, so he's making a run for it. He's heard that Third Dreama is a large city, and if he's going to take the unique scenarios seriously, he prefers it to be from a spacious city. He asks Emil if she understands, but she has no idea what he's talking about and agrees with everything. She offers to help him get to the other city and invites him to join a group. Sunraku accepts and joins Emil's group, realizing that her stats are much better than his. Speed is the only stat where he's superior. He starts to wonder if Lekem's mark activated this unique scenario. He wonders if Emil, the little rabbit, is the game's way of compensating for this. As they are about to embark on their journey, 2 female players notice Emil and comment on how cute she is but wonder how someone has a Vorpal rabbit as a pet. They also notice the guy with a bird mask and get scared. Sunraku realizes he needs to get out of there as he doesn't want them to find out about the unique scenario of the Vorpal rabbits, so he takes off running. The players wonder how to tame one of those Vorpal rabbits, and as the guy runs away, one of them takes a screenshot of Sunraku with Emil on his arm, saving it to ask questions about it on the forums. This is the last thing Sunraku wanted. He runs until there are no more players around, and Emil comments that she's not suited for running around like that. Sunraku asks what they should do next, and he wants to confirm a part of the cursed text that says monsters lower level than him will flee. At that moment, a bizarre goat-like monster comes charging at Sunraku, but when it sees the mark, it stops in its tracks, turns around and leaves. With his theory confirmed, Sunraku runs to ambush the monster and gain a bonus attack for inertia. It's a law of physics that isn't typically considered in the real world, but few games try to replicate it. Emil is amazed by the attack and mentions that it was hard to tell which of the two was the monster. Sunraku now knows that even with the mark, he can defeat monsters of this speed or slower. Now that he has checked what he needed to, he discusses the next plan, which is simply to ignore all the weaklings. He'll head straight for the area boss, and that's it. Emil doesn't think it's a good plan, but since they are both speedsters, they'll get to the area boss quickly and reach Thirdrima. He checks the map and sees that the area boss should be where they are, but all he can see is a swamp. He now understands what Emil was trying to tell him earlier. He was in a hurry to leave the city and didn't ask about the area boss. She informs him that the monster's name is the Mud Digger. It emerges from the ground to attack, so it's crucial to find a way to trap in one place. Sunraku is now in a bit of trouble as he's going to have to fight in a swamp, and he might not do well. Emil realizes the monster is approaching and warns Sunraku. As the monster emerges from the swamp, Sunraku tells Emil to climb on his shoulder. In Shangri-La Frontier, the swamp forces everyone to walk. One leg is always stuck until the other foot reaches the bottom. This situation is the worst for Sunraku. The area boss, the Mud Digger, is then revealed, and it's a gigantic slug-like creature. The game recommends having at least 4 people in a group to fight this boss. Sunraku counts as 2, but he's not so sure about his chances. The battle begins with both of them observing each other. Rakuro wonders how he's going to fight with this swamp limiting his speed. The swamp boss takes a surprisingly high leap given its enormous size, and Rakuro wonders how it can dive into such shallow mud. Yep, that's how games go. The monster approaches Rakuro and he uses a sliding move to dodge the attack. The battle experience with Lake Cannon has improved several skills, so discovering the best way to use them will be the key to winning this battle. The monster tries to bite Rakuro, but he manages to stop it with his daggers and then counterattacks. The little bunny is impressed, but Rakuro says the real challenge begins now. In a few seconds of battle, he has already used the abilities that seemed most useful to avoid damage, both the counterattack and the sliding move. The cooldown time for each ability is 10 seconds, during which he cannot avoid damage. When the giant slug approaches him again, the bunny uses a skill called Magic Blade, which hits the monster in the face and knocks it into the swamp. Rakuro is impressed and he realizes that he forgot he has a partner. It seems a bit strange for a real player to rely on a real NPC, but now that he has a chance, he shouldn't waste it. He decides to reduce the distance while the monster is down using the acceleration ability, which provides a temporary bonus to attack and agility. Nonetheless, the approach is slow and Rakuro is getting frustrated. The giant slug gets up and attacks again, while Rakuro launches an attack called Spiral Blade. This immobilizes the monster for a while, allowing him to get close and use the Blade Climb, which is used for climbing tall walls, but in this case, he uses it on the monster. When he reaches the top of the slug, he suggests to Emil for an explosion, and the bunny agrees. Meanwhile, Rakuro tries to balance himself on the monster's nose while it attempts to eat him. When it's about to happen, Rakuro says it's too late as 10 seconds have passed. He uses the counterattack again, and then the bunny uses the Magic Blade enhanced by addition. With this, the giant slug is eliminated and falls back into the swamp. Rakuro and Emil also fall into the swamp, and the bunny gets upset because his clothes got dirty. Rakuro wonders where the giant slug has gone, and that's when the trembling begins. He feels like something is sucking his feet and he can't move. Quickly, Rakuro grabs Emil and throws him away to save his friend. The monster attacks him from below and throws him into the air. Rakuro thought it would be an instant death, but he barely takes any damage. It's then explained that the Mud Digger is a quadruped monster like a mole with a shark's head and catfish whiskers. Its most notable feature is a special attack activated when its HP reaches a certain point. It dives deep into the ground, causing the swamp to vibrate and immobilizing players in place. Then it randomly throws someone into the air with its nose. If a player challenges it alone, they'll be constantly hit while in the swamp and lose all their HP due to the fall damage. That's why it's also known as the Soil Killer. Rakuro imagines that whoever designed this boss surely has a complicated personality. He wonders what to do, considering magic items, but he quickly realizes it won't work. He's in big trouble, and he's never been able to get used to deaths by falling in virtual reality games. As he's about to fall, Emil runs towards him and tells him to show his Vorpal spirit. In that moment, Emil manages to reach him just as he's about to hit the ground, and he uses a magical scroll to teleport them. Rakuro is teleported above the giant slug's head, and in this world of Shangri-La, there's an attack skill called the Meteor Drop, which uses the energy of the fall. Sunraku had accumulated a lot of energy during his fall, and when Emil teleported him above the Mud Digger, he had that energy. So what would typically be a fall that results in a player's elimination is recklessly rebranded as a risky attack. In other words, it's not a meteor drop, it's a meteor drop by mistake. Finally, with this attack, the swamp monster is defeated. Rakuro loses a significant amount of HP due to hitting his head during the attack, but he's lucky to have 1 HP left, and with this victory, he reaches level 29. Emil congratulates him on the job, and Rakuro is still processing everything that happened, as so much happened in such a short time, and he's having trouble organizing his thoughts. He celebrates with Emil and praises the bunny, who tells him to stop imitating what he says. Like with Leikin, Rakuro had difficulties in this battle, with the difference that this time he survived and won. After some time following that battle while they're walking, Rakuro consumes some herbs to restore his HP. However, even the herbs don't bring his HP back to the maximum immediately. Emil is surprised that Rakuro shoved the herbs down his throat, but Sunraku says it's the only way to get them into his mouth, given that he has a woodpecker's beak. Sunraku thinks about how Emil has incredible strength, and in reality, he ended up being carried on Emil's back. He hopes that Emil will work hard and put in the effort to become as strong as a Vorpal rabbit. Emil says that they'll soon reach Thirdrima and asks if, after they arrive, Sunraku will stay in rabbits the whole time. Sunraku confirms this and then brings up another question about how to hide Emil when they reach the city. Drawing too much attention, as they did the last time, could make them vulnerable to attacks. Emil says that in that case, he'll use the mysterious rabbit bracelet, the treasure of Vorpal rabbits. He asks Sunraku to keep it with him and then shouts the word metamorphosis. He transforms into a little girl, ensuring that he leaves Sunraku surprised. This will allow them to enter the city without being noticed. Sunraku finds it all very strange, as he thought he was playing the best Japanese game in the world, but now he thinks Shangri-La is some kind of harem game with a rabbit girl. He figures he's taken quite a trip. At this point, Emil cancels the transformation and mentions that it's quite exhausting and that he'll transform again once they arrive in the city. 4 or 5 minutes is the limit in his current state. Sunraku understands and thinks that when they're in the city, Emil will have to revert to his normal form when they're in private. However, he points out that Emil made a mistake, a fatal Vorpal misunderstanding. He says that the moment he started walking around with the half-naked birdman, he made himself even stranger. Sunraku thinks that, in the end, Emil will have to play the role of the desperate girl walking with a half-naked birdman. They finally arrive in Thirdrima, and Emil comments on how big and lovely the place is just as he remembered it. Sunraku doesn't seem very impressed. He says he's not like a destiny-guided warrior and has seen many places. He tells Emil to move on and prepare to transform to avoid suspicion. In Thirdrima, the guards are surprised and ask why Sunraku is half-naked. They think he's caught some criminal. Sunraku confirms that he already knew that he's a stranger, and the guards also notice the frightening marks on his body. Emil, in the form of a girl, tells the guards that this man has a past that brings sadness just by hearing about it. She begins to lie to the guards, saying that guided by his own destiny, Sunraku was reborn as a super warrior and challenged his rival from a past life, none other than Leikin. But by the smallest difference, by a hair's breadth, by the slightest caprice of fate, he was cursed. Sunraku wonders where she got all this story, but Emil continues with the lie, stating that, unable to escape destiny, Sunraku was forced to go with the flow of fate. A lonely warrior wandering on a journey to remove the curse that's been plaguing him. That's Lord Sunraku. She keeps spinning the lies until the guards finally understand. It's rare to see a half-naked pioneer, but it's not unheard of. They allow them to pass. At this moment, Sunraku notices 2 guys in the corner, and he wonders it's just his imagination, as he usually stands out. Emil calls him to move on, and suddenly, a girl grabs Sunraku's hand, claiming to know him. He's completely puzzled and asks her who she is. We're then taken back a few hours to when Sunraku had encountered 2 girls in Secondale who started asking a lot of questions, and he ended up fleeing from them. One of them managed to take a screenshot of Sunraku with Emil and posted it on forums, asking how to form an alliance with a talking rabbit like Sunraku did. Thanks to this, many players learned about Sunraku's existence and started asking how and when monsters could talk. This screenshot reached the girl who confronted Sunraku a few hours later. When she saw the post, she was hurt since she believed that you could only have dogs and cats as partners. She wondered if it was cheating, but she knew the game didn't tolerate any cheating. Various players who saw the screenshot wondered about the tattoos and mentioned that they didn't recall seeing a full-body design like that in the character creator. Then a player commented on the post, saying that the tattoos were a curse, a sign that you've been recognized by Leikin, the Emperor of the Night. Leikin is a random encounter, so it's not uncommon to hear about newcomers encountering him. But the players wondered how Sunraku ended up with a curse, and one player named Orsalot commented that they could eliminate Sunraku until he spilled the beans about everything. Orsalot is from the Ashura Kai clan, a clan that eliminates characters. At this point, the scene shifts to a red-haired woman who comments that if Mr. Sunraku is seeing this, he should talk to a player with a wolf emblem and a sword, apologizing for all the information about him that leaked, they can protect him. The woman is very interested in the Lycan's mark. Thanks to this screenshot, Sunraku has become a focal point, treated like a special event boss, and he has no idea about any of this. Now we return to the girl who challenged Sunraku. She asked how to tame a Vorpal rabbit, and Sunraku can't play dumb. She knows he was with a talking Vorpal rabbit. Sunraku wonders how she found out and what he should do now. He definitely won't reveal any information about the unique scenario, and he doesn't even know how to activate it. Sunraku responds that he doesn't know about that, and at that moment, another girl appears and tells him it's not cool to keep information to himself. Everyone should share the fun. Sunraku recognizes the player and immediately draws his daggers, calling her the Pencil Warrior. She corrects him, saying that in Shangri-La, she's known as Arthur Pencilgun. She's a level 99 player with a red skull next to her name, indicating she's a player killer. It turns out that Arthur Pencilgun, the Warrior of the Pencil, is friends with Sunraku and other bad games. To talk about her, we need to discuss a certain lousy game known as Unite Rounds. In this game, there's a shop where two looters are taking a bunch of stuff, and at the exit, they decide to split up. But at that moment, the player Sunraku appears, praising them for their work in obtaining the items but stating that he's going to take everything. Players claim that this is a post-apocalyptic looting game. Originally, it simulated a kingdom on the brink of collapse, with players taking on the roles of knights protecting people from attacking monsters in a cooperative MMO. Due to the overly complicated and poorly designed system, item drop rates were abysmally low, leading to a shortage of serious players. Even the beginner quest, gathering medicinal herbs, required 12 hours of searching the open fields to complete. And of course, finding higher grade items was even more challenging. So what did the players decide to do? The answer is simple: steal what they needed. Instead of spending hours on a quest, players thought they should just attack an NPC shop or steal from players who had already done so. In this, Unite Rounds hit the mark. In a world filled with atrocities and where everyone was an enemy, a single figure consumed by violence and knowing every trick in the book took control of the kingdom, the Pencil Warrior. Now in charge, she declares that they will share all the wealth and items. The players celebrate, and thus the Pencil Kingdom was born. On that very day after nightfall at dawn, we see all those players who were celebrating a few hours earlier now lying defeated and looted on the ground. It's at this moment that Sunraku and his colleague Katsuo enter the castle, and Sunraku takes the opportunity to grab some things for himself as well. Katsuo asks Sunraku if the game isn't about defending the kingdom from monsters. Sunraku responds that he thought it was about defeating the true evil queen, the Pencil Warrior. She was nothing like the final boss in the game's story. She intentionally abused players who didn't follow her and then used her agents to create an organized resistance to oppose her. In other words, she fueled the victims' desire to fight back, preventing them from simply giving up on the game. This time, Unite Rounds was completely catering to the whims of a single player, and she acted under the name she had chosen, Dystopia Empress. She is surprised and comments that Sunraku used the rebel army as a distraction for a small attack in her private quarters. She thinks it was a clever move. Sunraku remarks that she could have used more efficient traps. It was so easy that they got through on the first try. Sunraku and Tataki Katsuo, she says she will remember those names. Dystopia Empress says that there's something about Sunraku's silly grin that annoys her, so she says it's time for the battle against the boss and asks if they can defeat her and become the Revolutionary Knights. After this scene in Unite Rounds, we return to Shangri-La where the two meet. They have a history together in another game. In Unite Rounds, they fought until it ended in a draw, with both of them dying in the end. But here in Shangri-La, they have a significant level difference. The one initiates the attack and says that she assumed the penalty and came to Fictitia just to eliminate Sunraku. She then launches an attack with 3 knives, but Sunraku manages to dodge 2 of them and defends against the other with his daggers. He suspects that these knives have a poison attribute. Pencil then asks Sunraku what level he is, knowing that he recently defeated the Mud Digger and assuming he must be around level 30. She mentions his remarkable dodging ability because it's a divine game, and to him, all of his movements are smooth. The girl who challenged Sunraku before Pencilgun arrived recognizes Pencilgun with surprise. She says that Pencilgun is the second in command of the Ashura Kai, a player-killing clan that eliminates other players. She wonders if Pencilgun is the infamous giant killing. Sunraku doesn't know the term and asks what it means. Pencilgun explains that it focuses on ambushing high-level players, which is why she earned the nickname Giant Killing. After these acts of hers, the developers made some adjustments to the game, making it much more challenging to ambush players. Sunraku takes the opportunity to make a joke, recalling that in Unite Rounds in that dystopia, he was the giant who ended up dead. He tells her not to confuse her size with the weight of her crimes. She laughs, saying that for a bird brain, he uses some complicated words. While attacking him, she tells him not to bring up that subject in this game. Sunraku counters her attack, asserting that he has a bird's head but not a bird's brain. Pencil then explains that she didn't come just for personal reasons. The leader of her clan, Ashura Kai, asked her to deliver a message. The message is that Sunraku must publish information about the unique scenario or walk around with a target on his back until he does. Sunraku realizes he's being threatened and thinks that this clan leader is an idiot. He runs toward the city gate, using some evasive abilities. Nevertheless, he wonders what to do as there's a significant difference in equipment and levels between them. Sunraku cleverly notices that Pencilvin is putting in a lot of effort to prevent him from getting closer to the gate. He assumes she adjusted the timing of the first attack to keep him from entering the city as well. It's indeed quite inconvenient for a player killer to operate in a densely populated city. Pencil then prepares for her next attack, and meanwhile, Emil, transformed into a girl, starts to appear. He's approaching the time limit of the transformation. The girl who challenged Sunraku before Pencildan arrived laments the fact that Sunraku is fighting Pencildan now because she couldn't get the information she wanted. At that moment, she notices Emil and goes to ask him a question. But right then, the transformation is undone, and the girl is left utterly baffled until she finally sees Emil in his original form at the worst possible time for Sunraku. The girl is enchanted with Emil in her hands, and he asks her to calm down. Sunraku was watching this, and Pencildan asks him if he's really underestimating her. That's when he gets the idea to use a counterattack and tells her that she's underestimating him. After giving her a kick, he orders Emil to come to him, and the rabbit obeys, immediately hopping onto his shoulder. Sunraku runs toward the city's entrance, and the crazy girl asks if she can at least take a picture. Sunraku says he'll allow it if they survive, but Pencildan asserts that he's not fast enough to escape her. Suddenly, an explosion occurs, and the crazy girl appears in front of Pencildan, saying that she doesn't care about Sunraku, but that if Pencildan puts that cute rabbit in danger, she'll eliminate her on the spot. Sunraku was pleased with this situation. He's made the girl named Animalia take him out of danger. He tells Emil that she really liked him. Now all they need to do is enter the city and use the teleportation portal to rabbits. It's unlikely anyone will discover Sunraku, but at this moment he stops everything and the scene shifts to Pencildan, who says that she's just the messenger. However, she didn't come alone. She then shows 4 other player kill clan members, all beneath her in terms of level and equipment. Pencildan is happy that now she can fight the zoo director, who leads the Sval Zoo clan, a group that documents monsters without interest in other players. Meanwhile, Sunraku is dealing with the 4 player killers, battling them head-on and saying they only surpass him in terms of level, equipment, and status. Animalia casts a super powerful and potent curse on Pencildan, but she absorbs the attack and reflects it back at the animal girl. Animalia has high status, particularly HP, but she uses many debuffs to help record monster videos. Animalia asks how Pencildan managed to reflect all her curses. Pencil explains that there was a PK shaman who wouldn't leave her alone, so she knows how complicated curses can be. That's why she carries a punishment straw doll that reflects all curses back to their caster. This time, Animalia had no luck. We return to Sunraku's fight, and he's thinking about his best target being the guy who thinks he's weak. With a slow weapon like a longsword, he doesn't even need to use skills to dodge those attacks. The problem is how to deal damage to higher-level players with stronger armor. Just then, a surprise occurs. Ria shows up in her armor, delivering a destructive blow to one of the player killers and eliminating him with just that one strike. The other 3 are shocked and wonder if that's the most powerful skill, the attack holder. Sunraku wonders what this attack holder is, and Ria looks at him, confirming the bird-headed Sunraku and the nickname. She finally managed to find Hizutome, and this moment takes us back a bit in time outside of virtual reality to Ria's home, where she's wondering where Hizutome is. She can't find him. She starts to think that the games he likes are quite unusual and challenging, and she's never been able to find a game they could play together. But Shangri-La is different. She knows how to play this game, and she won't let this chance slip away. She enters the game from a Secondale Inn and reads a message from her sister. Her sister asks Siger Zero, Ria's game nickname, to look for a specific player who was last seen near Secondale. He has a Vorpal rabbit wearing clothes and talks to him, probably on his way to Third Dreama. The message includes a picture of the player equipped with a birdwatcher mask, legs, and torso marked with Lycan. The player's name is Sunraku. Ria begins her search using a very fast-running skill. Several clans are trying to contact Sunraku, including the Ashura Kai. At this moment, Sunraku is likely already in battle, so Ria needs to be cautious. She spots Sunraku and thinks that if she saves him from the player killers, she'll have an opening to talk to him, maybe one day even in real life. She launches that powerful cutting attack we saw earlier, which wiped out one of the player killers. Pencil then says that things have become interesting, and maybe those player killers won't be able to defeat Sunraku. Battling him in Shangri-La has made one thing even clearer. The skills he acquired from various bad games of all genres are more valuable than unique items and higher-level status. That's a powerful weapon in Shangri-La Frontier. Pencilbin heard that Katsu is also playing Shangri-La now, so with him joining Sunraku, that project is becoming more realistic. When the dust settles and Pencilbin sees Siger Zero, she's entranced because first, Sunraku attracted the zoo director and now the attack holder. She's thrilled that she found Sunraku in the game, but then Animalia says she hit her with 5 spells. The punishment straw doll is extremely potent, with each doll being able to absorb up to 5 debuffs. Animalia asks if Pencilbin can now counter her final attack.